All right, hello.
Oh, hey, Destiny.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Nothing much. I don't know. I'm feeling really down after all that and what's going on at the CNN town hall. It's just like a big shit show.
Oh, sure.
Seems to me. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, man. To think that half the people, arguably, that share the same ideals as me on
I'm muting donations again.
firearms, or rather, like what we should do with them, are just that mind-numbingly retarded.
I'll
And
read
then
them
on the
out.
other end of the spectrum, like people are just so knee-jerk in their reactions and able to get so far with, let's say, I don't know, just really impassioned speeches that don't have facts behind them. I don't even know if that's true, man. I'm just losing hope at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I know how you feel. Again, like, for the record, like, I like guns, and I don't want to, like, ban guns. I'm usually against, like, most, like, liberal gun reform measures. I don't think banning specific types of firearms is a good way forward, but... are you able to turn up your volume at all? I've got you jacked to 200% and still really quiet.
Sure. Let me see if I can do that for you. Is this better at all?
Actually, wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. I think this is my fault. 1 second. Okay, try talking again.
How's this?
Okay, never mind. You're better. That was my bad. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know, man. So, I mean, when we talk about reforms, I think you and I are, like, pretty much on, like, the same page. I guess if we're just being pragmatic about it all, I don't really think any of the things that even we want can get passed until, like, we can have a really nuanced discussion on this issue. Like, in America, I'm in Canada, so, like, a lot of this doesn't necessarily apply to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel as if, like, the firearms issue that currently you're having is like a microcosm of just overall American politics and, like, the partisanship that exists there, like, on so many issues. And
Yeah, for sure.
both parties are willing to feed each other, like, ideas and policies that are completely indigestible to the other one. And so before you change that, I don't know how you change anything. Like, the only policy that I could see, like, maybe getting through, probably not, is, like, let's say some sort of mandatory education, like, revolving around, let's say, firearm safety. Like, sure, you might not want to own a gun, but at one point or another, with as many as you have in America, it's probably just good to know how to disarm and to properly store them. Just wait for cops to show up. I'm not too sure, man.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, like, requiring somebody to get educated on something, unless you're talking about, like, maybe a class in a public school or something, but...
Yeah, so I'd probably be something similar to what we have with, like, sex ed, or maybe even, like, driver's ed, if that's something that we mandate. I'm pretty sure we don't, though, at least in America, as well as Canada. The way I'd organize it is that, okay, maybe some government worker or, like, somebody from a charity or something like that walks into a classroom and for, like, let's say a week goes, okay, you know what, here are your rights, here's the law according to your state and your municipality. These are things that you may not want to touch, you may never want to be around, but at one point or another in your life, you're going to have to be around them. So it's good to know about what the function of these things are, what they're capable of, and ultimately how to properly store them, put them away, and just call cops after that. I can only see this as being like a net benefit for everybody. If you don't own them, now you know how to be safe around them. And if you do own them, well, we can avoid like the 5%, like the 1,500 people per year that end up dead because they don't know how to properly store or put their shit away, right?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess, like, the one thing I'm kind of iffy about at this point right now is, I remember, like, earlier you and Harkton, even today, were having a conversation about, let's say, mandating some sort of, like, background check associated with your mental health records and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, is there really a precedent here for, governments to...
Well, I mean, if you've been committed to like a mental health institution, depending on what you've been committed for, I don't think you're allowed to purchase a firearm. That's the only sort of equivalent thing I can think of.
Right, I guess so. I don't know. I'm only really worried about like whatever legislation could draw up like abuses, and so if there's not much room for that there, then I'm fine with it. I don't know. How do you feel about licensing?
Like getting a license to own a gun, or licensing individual guns, or
so licensing to like not a lot of people talk about licensing to own a firearm, right? And so like I guess I see the flaw in that. Recently, another person in this Discord that I've talked to about firearms brought up like an interesting talking point that firearms don't exist in the same capacity. Let's say a car or other things that require licensing do, right? These are like devices that are 100% like within the public sphere that like you can't separate from other individuals, where your life and the life of others are time like intertwined, whereas like firearms exist in this like very personal space. So I mean, a lot of people have been forwarding this, and I'm not really for it. I'm for, let's say, licensing concealed carry, but how do you feel about that?
I don't know what the pros and cons are of it. What is the reason to license a firearm? Isn't that just the process of like doing the background check and everything? Don't we pay for the license to kind of pay for the background check and all that, or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, not in Canada at least. It's just we want, like, in Canada, I think we just want it to be harder for people to like get a gun. In America, I don't think it would be paying for, let's say, the background check that it would apply to the individual. I don't know. It's just I just wanted to ask you where you stood on it. Like, do you have any other? Again, I've seen you talk about this before, but do you have any other suggestions? Like any other ideals, right?
No, I mean, it's really hard. What I would like to see is supposedly the CDC was our biggest source of information related to gun-related crimes, and they haven't been really allowed to dig into the issue for the past 20 years. So maybe letting them dig into it more can give us more suggestions. The United States is a really unique culture surrounding guns. So yeah, I mean, but I would like to see something tried. Like trying and failing is preferable to what we're doing now, which is essentially nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. And I guess the NRA is like a big reason for like a lot of that not moving forward anymore. I don't know how
the
to
NRA
feel about
and
the NRA.
politics in general about people on the right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a big shit show for me. Like on one side of the spectrum, you know, is like an avid like gun owner and somebody who wants to see like these rights extended to like where I live. I can see the benefits in it. Like, okay, you know, they've defended a lot of things that I would say are noteworthy, but at the same time, it's an organization that I think has contributed to like the racializing of the issue, right? That they're not so much interested in protecting the rights of firearms owners as they are protecting the rights of like you know, certain manufacturers or specifically like white firearms owners, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was Anton Chigurh. He was like a concealed carry permit holder, and I think he was shot in cold blood because he made that information like known to a cop. But the
I remember watching that. I've seen the video from two different points of view. Yeah, it's pretty fucked. It's really fucked.
So I don't know what to do. Like, I feel as if these lobbying groups weren't here,
I don't think the guy's name was I don't think the guy's name was Anton Chigurh, was it? Isn't that the guy from No Country for Old Men?
I think it might be.
Yeah, I don't remember the black guy's name, but I know what you're talking about, with his girlfriend, and I don't know if it was his kid or the girlfriend's kid in the back seat. Yeah, where the cop shot him after he said he had a firearm.
Yeah, I don't know.
but yeah, I know that story you're talking about. Yeah.
I guess I don't know what I don't know what the state of let's say American gun laws would be.
Oh, Philando Castile, I think. Sorry,
Philando Castile.
Yeah,
okay. I don't mean to disrespect the guy by dishing out wrong names. I don't know. I know that like as far as you think or like assert rather that like most people in America own firearms like out of recreational purposes. I don't know if I like 100% agree with that.
Yeah, so I'm a little snarky when I say that. What I mean by that is that I think that most firearms are owned for recreational purposes, but I include in that a lot of people that say they buy it for self-defense. I think that's a little dreamy when people say that they own their firearm for self-defense. Sure. I don't know if that's a legitimate reason that's backed up by data. Like, I've never seen data that points to having firearms making you safer under any, like, that's just not borne out in any data that I'm familiar with.
Oh, sure. No, I've heard plenty of arguments for people who are, let's say, like more in favor of gun control or like or against the idea of, let's say, self-defense. They'll argue, oh, being more compliant with, let's say, a burglar or somebody who's trying to mug you is going to be safer for you. I don't really care if that makes sense. I'm more interested in like one's ability to self-determine. Right? So, like in the same fashion that you're pretty on board with the defense of, let's say, private property and like say castle law, I'm not really interested in something being safer. I'm more interested in like the ability of an American citizen or any citizen for that matter to defend themselves against an individual or let's say a government, right?
Mm-hmm. I kind of agree with that, but it's just like you have to be careful because this can turn into like a cyclical arms race thing. So for instance, let's say that somehow in the United States a batch of bullets got in that were like baby-seeking murder bullets, right?
Gotcha.
Or like brain-seeking bullets, where if you pointed a gun in the air and fired a gun, that like the brain bullet would seek out the nearest person to kill them, right? That if something like this would happen, it seems like we could go one of two ways. We could either say like, this is really fucked and we need to make this stop, or we need to say that everybody should have the brain-seeking bullets because we want people to be able to protect themselves, you know? Like, I like the idea of everybody being able to protect themselves, but like in most European countries, people don't feel like they need to buy a gun to do it because all of the people that come to kill you or whatever, all the people that come to commit crimes in Europe aren't usually armed with guns like they are in the United States.
I guess so, sure. But at the same time, I'm not really like, I don't think even the NRA is arguing that like we need like all of these crazy things to defend ourselves. I think there's pretty clear-cut limits on what people are interested in having for the purposes of that, right? So, bump stocks, I think, like, from the moment that Las Vegas happened, the NRA and all these other organizations and Republicans and Democrats alike were like, yeah, we don't really need this. It's not a crazy thing. Or automatics, right? Like, there are people who still aren't that crazy about, let's say, the owning of an automatic firearm. Sure, that's fine, whatever. We really don't need it. Like, this is what we actually need, and this is what we understand to be practical. I don't know if, like, any new tech would drive people to, like, I don't think there could be, like, much of an argument made by firearms owners if there was some crazy new advancement that was super deadly. I don't think they'd be jumping on that, right? Because
Yeah, I would
I don't know,
hope
like,
so, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there are examples of this, like, already, right? We don't always ask for, let's say, stuff that's designed to be mil-spec. So, like, recently there was the modular handgun project that the United States had between Glock and SIG, right? And people aren't asking for the exact, like, military version of that. It's like, we don't need that. That's fine. Just give us the civilian variant. That's all we really need. Like, I don't think people are jumping up and down.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I don't know. I'm not as familiar with that. I was under the impression that civilian shit is usually way cooler than mil-spec shit.
Oh, well, yeah, mil-spec, I guess, to be
like,
proper,
even local police
mil-spec is
departments have, like, way cooler shit than, like, because military shit is pretty... Do they still use Berettas? And I think, like, M4s, right?
But that was what the modular handgun project was for, is because they needed to replace like, fucking Berettas. Yeah. So now, like, I think they have the 320s. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, mil-spec overall as a term is just, like, a catch-all reference for, like, oh, this thing needs to be this long or this water resistant, right? But at the same time, it applies to certain modifications of, like, oh, this needs to be fully automatic and it needs to be that. Civilians aren't always asking for that. I don't know. Where do you stand on the whole materny thing, I guess, or...
I'm just not interested in it much. It just doesn't seem like a very likely scenario. I guess it could be, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems so unlikely. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's not as interesting of a consideration. And if you can show a huge demonstrable harm by having firearms, I don't know if, like, a super apocalyptic hypothetical is a good counter argument to a very real, threat that exists right now.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't, like, okay. How do I phrase this properly? So it's kind of nervous wracking to be on, like, a show with this many people watching. I suppose, like, the way I see it is that there are these very real problems that we have to, like, deal with and legislate around now, but at the same time I see this as kind of being an inevitability, right? Like, even now we can have an argument about the state of, let's say, American democracy, the American Republic, and other democracies, let's say, in Western Europe that have taken way to political dissidents, right? And that, these things, these institutions that we've hailed as being infallible, right? Or,
well, I don't think we say they're infallible. We just accept some level of corruption or some level of fuckedness, and we don't need there to be firearms all over the country in order to counter some perceived level of injustice or whatever. That we acknowledge that sometimes they can exist, but we do our best to counter that. But a reasonable alternative isn't arm every single citizen and have a fuck ton of gun violence to counter these.
Well, but I don't think anyone's making that argument. Like, I'm certainly not making that argument, right? In that people with, like, any kind of, like, mental disability should probably be barred from owning firearms. People with a criminal record, depending on that record and how long it's been since then, probably shouldn't be able to own them. At the same time, I don't know. I'm just, if things can be as, let's say, if we're willing to accept that things can get to where they are now, I don't see why it's such a crazy leap in logic to understand that with any kind of extra socioeconomic pressures, that political dissidents can do way more damage than what they're doing now, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. Just trying to think of talking points, because if you're not interested in that, then there's no point in really talking about it, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. So,
oh man, I don't know. Like, do you have any other suggestions? Any other things that, like, you might find kind of off-putting, or?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty pro-gun, so like, I'm not, like, a big, like, ban all the guns and everything. So we probably don't disagree on too much.
Right. I don't know. So, goodness me. I don't know. Ask me a question or something, man. I can't think of anything. I feel like I'll have wasted your time if I came here for so little. I don't know.
I can't think of anything. I don't know.
Okay, I mean, we could talk about, like, let's say, the presence of armed security, what, like, the immediate response should be to, let's say, making schools safer, right? I can't say that I'm really on board with the idea of arming teachers or anything like that, but I don't think it'd be unreasonable to
Well, like the
have a
problem is
discussion.
there seems like there would be like a million different things that would come along with that. Like there's so many potential problems with arming teachers that I find that very difficult to approach that topic. Right?
No, that's that's not what I'm advocating for. I do think that in spite of the fact that like the people that you were arguing with earlier were just a little far from reasonable, right? That there's a little bit of validity to the argument that, you know, soft targets in America are probably not worth it, just pragmatically speaking, right? I remember earlier you said that, oh, you know, all of Europe is a soft target because they don't have the same number of guns in circulation that we do. But yeah, that's the problem, is that they don't have the same number of guns in circulation.
Well, that's why I would suggest ways to get rid of the guns, if there's a way to do it, at least illegal firearms on the street. Also, soft target is relative too. Like, imagine we start arming everybody everything. Well, then it's going to be like, well, who only has handguns?
Oh, I mean, sure, but again, like, we're just talking about, like, let's say armed security measures. So, like, it would be arguably a police department, or it would be like a security firm or something like that. I don't know. Oh God, I had something to say.
We were talking about armed teachers, soft spots. You said all of Europe. Oh, you said like all of Europe is a soft spot. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, like, again, like, at this point, pragmatically, we just have to assert that it's impossible keep these zones safe when, like, the response time, right, to, let's say, a shoot. Jesus Christ, man, I don't know. I've lost my train of thought.
It's hard to rely solely on the police, or...
Well, yeah, sure.
Because the response time is high. Yeah, I mean, killings happen very fucking fast. Less than 5 minutes, you can kill 20 people with a...
Yeah, sure. The whole, like, you know, lives can be lost in seconds when, like, the cops are minutes away or whatever. Like, at this point, I don't really know if it's worth it to keep soft targets, or rather, like, gun-free zones around. It's like, hell, even army bases have been targeted in the past, like, for this reason. I remember that now I remember. I was going to ask you about, like, buybacks. I don't really think that buybacks, right, or any kind of like, these responses are worth it. Like, there have been studies conducted that suggest that no, you know, in fact, buybacks don't really do all that much in trying to reduce crime or trying to like, tackle these issues, right? So what will happen is people will take their gun from their attic, and it's usually, like, let's say a bolt action rifle, like a FUD gun or something like that, or something that's completely outdated, right? And then they will go, oh, okay, well, I'll hand this in to the police and I'll get my money back, but I'm not going to hand in my AR-15 or anything like that. There have been previous examples, right, in American history, recently, actually. I think Massachusetts and Los Angeles are, like, the two better examples of where mass buybacks were like, put in place, specifically with magazines, like high capacity magazines as they were, where I think, like, maybe not even 30% of, like, the firearms owning population, like, handed anything back in, right? So, like, the impact of them seems, like, really, really poor, and it seems to incentivize people to, like, make money as opposed to do the right thing.
Sure, yeah, I don't know. I would have to look at the data. I'm not entirely sure on the buyback thing, if that's been done well in the United States or not. So yeah, I would have to look that up more. That's data that I need to acquire.
I don't know. Is there anything else, like, you want to ask me, or is there anything else, like, pressing you on firearms that you think is worth discussing right now?
No, I think that's about it.
Do you think there's anything that we could, like, do you think there's anything could be do you think there's anything that could be done to, let's say, I don't know, wrestle, like, the knee-jerk reaction that we often see people have to these shootings? Because I think that, if anything, that's probably, like, another big problem in passing any kind of nuanced, like, reform, right?
Yeah, I mean, people are very dug in on their sides. This is true of every political issue. So, I mean, immigration, healthcare, it's the same for both of those as well.
Sure. I guess before I go, I think, like, I'm not the most, like, well-equipped person to talk to you about this, but I wanted to have this conversation nevertheless, because in the last couple of days, like, on the Discord, there's been this really visceral reaction by both sides of the argument, and I don't think there's been, like, a really good chance for anyone with to have, like, a decent conversation or a nuanced conversation about any of these things. If you're interested, there is somebody whose name's, like, Stanley TM Original Flavor. You might want to look into talking to him. Like, he's a lot more knowledgeable about the subject than I am, and he could probably give you better talking points than whatever I've done tonight. I don't know. Yeah,
sure, if the guy wants to. I mean, I can look him up if I ever have the opportunity to, sure.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Thanks for having me, Destiny. I think you've done a lot to wrestle me away from political opinions that I don't think I could ever see myself having again now. Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's a big help.
Well, thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a good day, man.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye.
Destiny, do you ever feel like these debates are pointless when you consider that most of the population can't think critically due to educational and time constraints? How do you stay optimistic? I don't know. I just do my thing. I'm not very optimistic anymore, though. When they gish gallop you, maybe you have to abandon your immediate interruption with them disagreeing. Oh, wait, I think we listened to some of these. Squire thinks you need to have guns to fight off tyranny and that it would be successful in this day and age. He doesn't believe that the U.S. government would hesitate to crush you. Okay, let me address this argument real fast because a lot of people make this argument. A lot of people make the argument that if we have guns, we can fight back against the government. And then a lot of people point out a very reasonable counter argument that is like, okay, you're not going to fight back against the fucking government. They've got drones and tanks and all this shit. Like, you're never going, like, just a rifle isn't going to help you against drone strikes. So I don't actually think that's true. I think you can make a very strong argument for a fuck ton of armed people being much harder to take over than a fuck ton of unarmed people. Like, on a straight-up battle, the United States will win, obviously, because the army will march through and crush people. But if every single citizen, or not every single one, but a large percentage of citizens are armed, it makes taking over these places much more difficult. For evidence of that, just look at the fighting that happens in the Middle East, right? It wasn't difficult for us to roll through Mosul. It didn't take us months to organize this offensive because, you know, they had so many more people than us. It's because people are hiding in fucking buildings. It's because of guerrilla warfare. It's because any civilian around you could whip out a fucking IED or a rifle. It's very, very, very difficult to overtake a population of people that don't want you there if all of them are armed. Yeah, sorry, I'm just bringing, just because I see a lot of people will shoot that argument down like it's really stupid, but it's a legitimate argument and yeah, the entirety of the Vietnam War, sure, that's actually a legitimate argument that if you've got a population of armed people, it's very hard for anybody to overthrow that or to take over that population in a tyrannical way. Would you debate Steven Crowder? I might, because I've never done it before and because of his audience size and because he seems to be more the traditional conservative than the insane fucking lunatic that exists like on the Andy Warski platform. So yeah, I would probably do that guy, yeah. Sure, but is that worth it to have so many gun deaths per year? No, I don't think so. That's why I argue no. I don't think that the hypothetical maybe of some tyrannical dictatorship in the future is worth how many people die per year to gun shit. The reason that doesn't work is we already have a police big enough to police our population over and above the army, and it's not a universal opposition since it's within domestic. It's more like Nazi Germany than it is like invading a foreign country. I don't know what you mean. If the police is not big enough to take on the population, it wouldn't even be close. If the police force, even in my city, wanted to fight all those civilians, they would lose 1,000,000 times over. It wouldn't even be a close fight.